Well, I'm very excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this since I was first asked to do a presentation several months ago here. And I said to Dennis earlier that the toughest part was having been involved with SENS for so long, and I think, Bob, you can attest to this, it's just deciding what to leave out in order to make a half-hour presentation work. So here's what we're going to talk about today. I want to give you a quick sort of evolution of SENS, give you some historical perspective of it and what it looks like today. I want to talk about the benefits of SENS and SENS certification to you as instructors in your schools and to your students. I want to talk a little bit about SENS certification and contrast that with QC7 Welder certification, the more formal professional cert. And then I want to give you a rationale for a code of ethics that we're working on in a student bill of rights, and I want to do that within the context of a case study of a school that claimed to be a SENS school, but things didn't really work out very well. So we'll talk about that toward the end of the presentation. Why standards for welding education? Well, those of you who've been around for a while, going back to the late 1980s, recall that the Department of Education and the Department of Labor identified or defined 42 skill areas that were critical for the United States to succeed in a global marketplace. Back in 1994, an act of Congress created the National Skill Standards Board. You may remember that organization. I can remember attending a presentation that they put on in Columbus, Ohio, representatives, and they were basically brought into being in order to create a voluntary national system of skill standards, assessments, and certification for those 42 trades. And they did that by basically working with organizations like NATEF, AWS, NIMS for machining, and so forth. AWS was actually commissioned to develop the national guidelines and assessments for the certification, for assessments and certification for welding education. This is a quick overview of the history of SENS, if you want. In 1995, Level 1 SENS was introduced, targeted primarily to the secondary school groups. In 1996, Level 2 and Level 3, the advanced welder and expert welder, were introduced. In 2008, I'm thinking we actually released it in 2006, but the documents are dated 2008. We updated and modularized Level 1 in order that schools could participate in the process. One of the big problems with SENS Level 1, as you may recall, is that it was an all or nothing proposition, and a lot of schools did not have the time or the technology on board to actually accomplish SENS. So they might adopt it, they get into the program, and then can't get their students certified, so that became a real issue. So we modularized SENS Level 1 for that particular reason, and it's been out there since 2006 to 2008 as the modularized program. We just modularized recently over about a 2-year period, Level 2. So Level 2 is now updated and modularized, and we took Level 3, which is the expert welder. The expert welder was kind of an oddball piece, actually. It required 3 to 5 years practical experience in order to actually participate in it. I don't know many community colleges or many high schools that are actually going to have students come back after 3 to 5 years to go through and get their expert SENS certification. It was perhaps a possibility in the trade union area, but even there, once a person's out on the job and working as a journey person, it's pretty hard to bring them back again after 3 to 5 years for a SENS cert, which was largely just a modified certified welding inspector program with some qualification tests tied in with it. So we folded Level 3 into Level 2. And so what is SENS? Well, really, specifications and guidelines to promote consistency in welding education and to emphasize the knowledge and skills required in today's welding industry. So we've tried to focus in on those things which are relevant to industry today and embody those in guidelines. It's not a curriculum, There's been some confusion about that. You can't take that yellow book, which is the guide, and give it to a group of students and have them succeed. It's really the guide for you, the instructor, the guide by your side as you're working with your students, guiding them through their welding education. The blue book is actually the specification which kind of defines your relationship with AWS as you go through and participate in the SENSE program. This is what entry level looks like today. It's now a modularized program. On the right of the screen, you see the optional modules. Those are all the welding processes. So your students can be certified in shielded metal arc welding or gas metal arc welding or flux core arc welding or GTAW, whichever suits your particular environment. But they all are also required to take the modules on the left and achieve minimum performance in those: occupational orientation, safety and health of welders, drawing and welding simple interpretation, thermal cutting processes. Two minimum requirements here: OFC and PAC, because those are required in the workmanship and performance qualification tests, and welding inspection and testing. Now, level 2, just to give you a sense of what that looks like in the new version, or the modularized version. As you can see on the right, a lot more modules, but again, it breaks down into the 4 welding processes: shielded metal arc, gas metal arc, flux core arc, and gas tungsten arc, except now we've added a pipe module. So your students can be certified in advanced shielded metal arc plate, provided they've achieved their certification in entry level. And they can receive a certification in shielded metal arc pipe, provided they've completed their level 2 shielded metal arc plate. And again, you can choose one or more of any of those processes. We've also added a welding fabrication module. There was kind of a hint of that in the original level 2, and we fleshed that out into a more robust welding fabrication module, again, which is optional for those of you who have a fabrication element to your program. The required modules: trade math, a real weakness was actually identified by WeldEd in a survey that they did some time ago. That trade math was a real weakness, and we needed to focus on that. Welding metallurgy: what a welder needs to know, not everything there is to know about metallurgy. Welding inspection and testing methods, documentations governing welding inspection, and advanced thermal cutting processes. Primarily, we're talking about, out of position cutting, horizontal, vertical, and so forth. So those are the two, the level 1 and level 2, as they look today as modularized programs. Now, SENSE Level 2, I mentioned earlier that SENSE Level 2, we folded Level 3 into Level 2, and we're offering those through we're offering endorsements for those qualification tests that were associated with Level 3. We're offering them as endorsements in Level 2. So titanium, for example, or aluminum pipe, if those are important to you and to your area that you're serving, or to your company, if you're a manufacturer, those can be, you can get endorsements for those processes or competencies. And basically, the idea here is that if you're going to go for endorsements in a particular process, the student has got to complete the qualification test for the corresponding level 2 process. So if you're doing TIG titanium, they'd have to complete their TIG certs for level 2, and then they can get an endorsement for TIG on titanium. One nice feature about level 2 is that the performance qualification tests associated with level 2 are all your standard performance qualification tests that you do for QC7, 3G, 4G, unlimited, 6G pipe, and so forth. So you can, or your student can, if they wish, get optional QC7 certification for their level 2 certs.
Certified AWS certified.
AWS certified welder, yeah.
Did your facility have to be an accredited AWS facility to use it?
No, and I'll talk about this later, but for QC7 cert, it would have to be done at an authorized testing facility, an ATF.
To register the certificate. So they've taken the same test, the only difference is you're verifying and registering the qualification. But you have to be an ATF to be able to do that.
It's being witnessed by a CWI, it's being done at an ATF, and otherwise it would just be a regular Sense cert. Okay, benefits, talked a little bit about benefits of Sense. We talked about someone was talking about stackable, portable, and transferable credentials. Sense is all about that. You can build your certifications one on another. Industry recognized third-party certification to satisfy Perkins. Certainly a strong partner in AWS for your third-party certifier there. A modular design, we've worked very hard to modularize the Sense program to accommodate almost any welding program, any configuration that you may have. Enhanced credibility of welding program to be associated with AWS, to be offering educational certs which have been articulated and defined by the American Welding Society, certainly as a leg up for any welding program. Access to Sense Online, David Hernandez and his group have been working very, very hard on creating a really super online experience for testing, for student record keeping, and for reporting. And he may talk about that a little later on. And also, of course, your students are registered in the National AWS Sense Welder database as successful Sense participants. This is what your students will get at the end of their training, and they'll get one for each cert that they do, or they can do all of them at once. Their actual certifications will be listed on the cert, on the documents, and on the wallet card. So it's a nice benefit for them as they're moving into the workforce to have an actual AWS certification that they can take to their employer and say, look what I've done. Obviously, they're going to be, doing qualification tests within the organizations that they're joining or hoping to join, but they will have this certification available to them as they move out into the workforce. And Level 2 will have a very similar look to it. So AWS certification, what does it do? Well, first of all, it assures the potential employers that your students are attempting to work with that candidates possess the foundational knowledge and skills necessary to do the job, and in some cases to do the job with very little additional training, hopefully. The certifications are modularized by welding process, so a student can get a cert in shielded metal arc or in gas metal arc, whatever it is that whatever community you're serving in your area, whatever companies are in the area of your schools. Features standardized written exams. We heard earlier about the effort to standardize everything in Indiana around standardized tests and performance. Sense basically does that across the country. So students who get a Sense cert have gone through the same testing experience, hopefully online, which is a great way to do it. And standardized workmanship and performance qualification tests, again, consistent throughout the country to build that consistency in the workforce. Let me distinguish a little bit between Sense certification and QC7 certification. Sense certification is really kind of a broad, it's broad in scope. It basically is an assurance that individuals have a functional level or minimum level of knowledge and skill. It involves essential theory and performance, not just performance, and it's administered by the individual training organization. On the other hand, QC7 certification, which is what one would get through AWS, the professional certification if you want, it's governed by D11, the welding code. specific to material process and position. It tests the ability of the individual to perform acceptable welds under specified conditions using a qualified WPS, and it's witnessed by a CWI and administered at an ATF, authorized testing facility. I'm going to talk a little bit about Level 2, just where we're at with Level 2 in terms of getting it implemented. We're looking at implementation probably fourth quarter of this year to implement the modular program that you saw earlier. We are working currently on a training organization code of ethics and student bill of rights. And why are we doing that? Well, for a few reasons. First of all, we want to make sure that training organizations understand and abide by their responsibilities with respect to sense. We want them to understand what they're getting into and what their commitments are. We want to ensure that students understand their rights in a sense program for a quality welding education, including the right to timely information about their performance. And perhaps most important, we want to maintain the integrity of sense by preventing fraudulent reporting and of test scores and training completions. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me give you a case study of where things went terribly wrong for a school that claimed to be a sense school. And I think you'll see the importance of having that integrity built into the program for those of you who are participating in sense. Okay, a school by the name of Duchess Bose's in New York State, part of the Bose's group, was registered as a sense school starting in 2006. They really didn't teach a sense-based curriculum. They never submitted to AWS any students for graduation, and yet they advertised in their syllabus that there was an opportunity through their program to take multiple AWS certification tests free of charge. The students were told that their test scores were actually being sent to AWS for recording, and they were issuing certificates, AWS Sense certificates, with the AWS logo and so forth. In fact, I think this is the certificate here. Looks very professional, very, a level 1 welder, AWS logo, which happened to be photoshopped onto a certificate that they decided was a nice looking certificate, and then very official with signature at the bottom. But really, they weren't actually doing all the training that they were claiming to do as part of the Sense program or the certification that they were issuing. So one student was very concerned about the fact that he had a certificate that said he could do things that he really wasn't trained to do. And he complained to his parents that he was upset about it. His parents complained to AWS and to the state authorities in New York. AWS, of course, cooperated with the State Attorney General's office for the state of New York. And the school ended up being prosecuted and found guilty of false advertising and deceptive practices. They just wanted to be a sense school and do their thing and, move along. So here's what the outcome was. They were forced to remove all their affiliation with AWS, including they were no longer able to use the Sense logo on their certificates. They were required to make restitution to the state of New York. They were required to reimburse the family that complained the cost of tuition. They were assessed a $5,000 penalty, and they got lots of bad press. I think David did, 3 interviews from the press over this whole thing. And of course, this led to the whole concept of how do we preserve the integrity of the Sense program for those schools out there that are doing things right. Consequently, the Bill of Rights became a very important issue, as did the responsibilities, the code of ethics, if you want, for the training organizations. And that's what we're working on now. That's what we're going to be incorporating into Level 2, and then it'll be also part of Level 1. And so that's what's happening. So let's take a quick recap here. I can tell you personally, and I think Bob Richwine, who worked together with us on the Sense subcommittee, we've worked thousands of hours, literally thousands of hours, along with people in the education department, to bring Level 1 and Level 2 to you as a modularized program. And the whole goal, of course, is keep America competitive in this global marketplace. That's what Sense was all about when they first defined those 42 skill areas or trades back in the late 1980s. Sense provides stackable, portable, and transferable credentials that enhance the credibility of your program and give your students a leg up in terms of getting jobs in the marketplace. I can't think of a better partner than AWS for third-party certification for your Perkins funding. AWS is a strong player, always has been, and is recognized for their tremendous work in certifications and so forth. So, we've really worked hard to make Sense a modular program. And because it's a modular program, it should fit into any of your training situations, whether it be you're teaching one process or more than one process. We're really, AWS is constantly working to add value through innovations like Sense Online, to make it a better experience for you to manage all the administrative aspects of your life as a trainer and educator. But really, the credibility of the program kind of depends on every school that participates in it. We learned that from the Bosie's example. I think there were 7 other examples altogether where there were some issues that were not completely kosher. So AWS is really taking all the necessary action to maintain the integrity of Sense on your behalf as participating organizations. Anybody have any comments or questions?